The psychiatric system's impact on four individuals reveals a complex web of trauma, institutional challenges, and the human struggle for understanding and healing. Their stories, beginning in the fluorescent lit corridors of a psychiatric ward, interweave to expose deeper truths about mental health care and human experience. Each narrative thread contributes to a larger tapestry of systemic challenges and personal resilience. The narrative opens with four distinct yet connected individuals, each entering the psychiatric system at different points, but sharing common experiences of institutional care. A 17-year-old boy arrives trembling, his heart racing as panic overwhelms his system. A young woman struggles with unnamed inner turmoil, her hands betraying the chaos she cannot verbalize. Another 17-year-old searches desperately for reassurance from overworked staff members who themselves are struggling with burnout and systemic limitations. The fourth, a 21-year-old, silently maps invisible patterns of fear across the institutional floors, creating a personal geography of trauma that others cannot see. Each carries what's described as a shadow, not inherent pathology, but the weight of systemic misunderstanding and institutional harm. These shadows represent the accumulated impact of trauma, misdiagnosis, and the often unintended consequences of standardized psychiatric care. The fluorescent halls become both literal and metaphorical spaces where these shadows deepen and interact. The experience of panic emerges as a central theme, manifesting as an internal alarm system convinced of imminent danger. This isn't simple anxiety, but a deeper phenomenon residing in the body's nervous system and cognitive structure. Years of trauma and institutional stress amplified this terror into a persistent, overwhelming force that defied conventional understanding. The physical manifestations, racing heart, scattered thoughts, constricted breathing, become part of a larger pattern of bodily response to profound psychological distress. Borderline characteristics appear intertwined with panic and terror, creating a complex web of psychological responses. These manifestations, fear of abandonment, identity confusion, black and white emotional thinking, and heightened sensitivity, represent survival mechanisms in response to perceived hostility. Under extreme stress, the ego itself becomes fragile, sometimes completely dissolving in what's described as a real, observable collapse of psychic structure. This dissolution isn't metaphorical, but represents a genuine breakdown in the ability to maintain a coherent sense of self. The first hospitalization at 17 presents as a labyrinthine experience, where even the intake process becomes traumatic. The reduction of complex human experiences to check boxes and codes highlights the system's struggle to capture the full scope of human suffering. The endless corridors, flickering lights, and echoing footsteps create an environment that often amplifies rather than soothes existing trauma. Mania emerges as a fascinating counterpoint to terror, not as random chemical fluctuation, but as the psyche's assertion against unbearable pressure. It manifests as a surge of energy, a form of protest, where identity inflates to protect against underlying terror. This pattern repeats across years and multiple hospitalizations, with the shadow growing more insistent over time. The manic episodes represent the psyche's attempt to reclaim agency through archetypal expressions of the hero, trickster, or magician. By 23, the chaos within mirrors the external world: crowded streets, blurring neon, and piercing sirens. The shadow tracks cycles of panic, mania, and dissociation, revealing a pattern that transcends individual diagnosis. Life outside the hospital begins to mirror the internal experience, creating a feedback loop between personal struggle and environmental triggers. a crucial insight emerges. These four patients represent parts of a collective narrative about misunderstood trauma, pathologized emotions, and iatrogenic effects, where treatment potentially amplifies rather than heals. The psychiatric system, designed for efficiency, struggles to accommodate human complexity. Each fluorescent lit room, each evaluation, reinforces a system that prioritizes standardization over individual experience. The diagnostic tools, the DSM, coding manuals, and insurance protocols treat symptoms as discrete disorders, missing the integrated pattern of experience. This fragmented approach fails to recognize how panic, terror, identity instability, ego dissolution, and compensatory mania interconnect within the human experience. The system's emphasis on categorization often obscures the underlying connections between symptoms and experiences. The narrative suggests that while the psychiatric industrial system isn't intentionally harmful, its structures can amplify the very experiences it aims to treat. The weight of cultural shame and the collision between human complexity and institutional efficiency create real harm. This systemic challenge requires recognition of how institutional practices can inadvertently reinforce trauma patterns. These interconnected stories illuminate how psychiatric care might evolve to better serve human needs, suggesting that recognition, mastery, and integration offer paths toward healing. The narrative challenges us to reconsider how we understand and treat mental health, pointing toward a more holistic and humane approach to care. The shadow, representing trauma, institutional harm, and misunderstanding, remains present but need not determine one's existence. The exploration reveals the necessity of understanding mental health beyond individual symptoms, seeing instead the patterns of human experience and survival that connect seemingly disparate cases. This perspective suggests the possibility of transformation within psychiatric care, where understanding shadows might lead to more effective and compassionate treatment approaches,